You know it's over for a company when their customers turn their backs on them. Shareholders are dropping 100 plus page presentations talking about the issues that they have with the company. And that exact thing is happening with Square Enix, and it doesn't look like they're going to be able to come back from this. I have a few different things to show off, but before I get into the topic, if you enjoy the content I create, check out the links in the description, join the community in my live streams, and consider supporting through Patreon or YouTube memberships. Now, I had just recently talked in another video about this giant presentation that was released, and it looked pretty bad for Square Enix. Their new IPs are getting absolutely destroyed. Existing IPs are not pulling in the numbers that they once expected. And now people on social media are saying they're getting what they deserved because previously, just a few weeks ago, we were hearing all of this big news about how Square Enix was apparently changing things internally. Now, take everything with a grain of salt, but they had announced major layoffs across nearly all areas of their Western business in an all hands meeting in November, and they had fired a lot of people that worked in the American and also European arms. It seemed like they were really cutting the ranks for the roles we would say are not important, or the roles that I think we all have recognized are a major issue, like ethics departments and the Western branch leaders who are basically saying, yeah, this is what customers in the world want, when that isn't the case. They're the ones who are saying, oh, we need to bring in more localizers. Oh, we need to change content. We need to appeal to a newer, fresher audience, when that was never a good plan, because they basically had said to abandon their existing fan base to chase a new audience, which never works out for these companies. But this brutal 100-page slide presentation really shows how poorly everything is going internally, and gamers are now calling it out, which we will talk about in a moment. But Square Enix has had a very rough couple of years. It was almost enough to make people feel bad for them, though 3D Investments, which holds a 14.36% stake in the company, is now looking to get other shareholders on their side. They're saying that they had a sluggish revenue growth rate, sluggish profit margins, there's mismanagement issues, there's been massive impairment losses on development assets which lack earning power, and a really hilarious part of this is that 56 slides in, they point out that some people on Metacritic called games bad, like Forspoken's dialogue cringe, that Babylon Fall was unrewarding, Marvel's Avengers had issues, and they took our feedback and put it in this presentation, which I think is actually really good, but you just know that the media hates this because they praised most of these games, even if these games were absolutely trash. They said that Forspoken was a story devoid of charm or immersion, only worth $20 to $25 or skip it, bad cringe dialogue, bad protagonist, unlikable characters, bad acting, bad pacing, and meh generic story. Babylon's Fall was monotonous and unrewarding. What a dull and boring game. The missions are repetitive and cumbersome, combat feels clunky and unpolished. Marvel's Avengers was blatant inducement towards continuous microtransactions. This game is so dull it lacks charm and personality. The fact that it's a live service game really hurts the overall story, and the missions are extremely repetitive and they end very abruptly, and there is a lot of grinding as if it's good, and this is too funny that these are the examples that they are trying to use to get across to Square Enix that they need to get their shit together. But there's no lies detected here. Forspoken had terrible dialogue, a really bad world, and sure, it graphically was pretty. I think that you can't really say a game is good based on a one single element. Babylon's Fall also had potential, but yes, it was monotonous and unrewarding. People gave up on that very fast, and Marvel's Avengers was microtransaction hell. They just expected you to do the same boring thing over and over and over, and everybody gave up on all of these games very quickly or didn't even give them a chance in the first place. And it's so nice for people to be calling this out because for years the media has been saying, oh, you guys are being dramatic. You don't want to give any new games a chance. You just want them to make Final Fantasy 27. But even the new Final Fantasy games are not doing great either, which speaks volumes as to the problems that Square Enix is facing. Yes, they have been focused a lot over the past couple of years on reboots and remakes, which can work, but they're going to run out of products to reboot and remake, and their new games in these series are failing too. Here is a list of recently released core titles that had been harshly criticized, and they use Final Fantasy 16 and Dragon Quest III Remake. Outdated and frustrating gameplay, horrible, one of the absolute worst remakes ever. I just can't believe that this god-awful mess would be released in 2024. Very boring and irritating. And then for Final Fantasy 16, low quality that betrays fan expectations. And you guys already know, I really enjoyed Final Fantasy 16, but it shouldn't have been a mainline title. It should have been a spin-off, and then everybody would have loved it, because when you know that you are walking into a mainline Final Fantasy game, you just have high expectations for the overall quality, type of storytelling, gameplay, and going in this drastically modern action direction wasn't for everyone. I still liked it as an individual experience, but yeah, it didn't meet people's expectations overall, and people now are laughing at Square Enix for their shareholders roasting them, for actually calling out the criticisms that gamers have had, and really, this could end up being positive. Maybe one day they will finally wake up and listen to us. Who knows? That's very rare, but knowing that these shareholders are voicing these major issues, along with the fact that they're firing tons of activists, it could be positive. Now, this post was very funny to me because this individual says all shareholders care about is money, money, and money. Unfortunately, it means Square Enix could be completely run into the ground at their whim. Fortunately, they don't have that highest stake in the company yet to directly influence, but who knows in the future? And this is good because it means a company will either sink or swim. Their focus should be making money, and if they're not making a lot of money and they're not making good products, that means they either have to raise the quality or they are going to go under. This is the best case scenario, is that they're actually being told what they're doing wrong, so maybe they can change. Only somebody who loves AAA slop, only somebody who loves this approach to ESG and DEI, only somebody who loves shilling for corpos would come out and say that this is a bad move. This isn't a bad move at all whatsoever. Square Enix has already had irreparable damage done to it, and sure, there is a very tiny percent that they could turn things around, but it is still there. There is still a small chance. I mean, Square Enix, it says, is the only big studio whose revenue is actually shrinking, according to an activist investor holding shares in Square Enix. We want companies to turn things around. That's all that we want, is for games to be good. I don't know who this Square Enix shareholder is, but what they said about 16 is based, low quality, that betrays fan expectations. It's not technically them saying it, it's them just giving a summary of what other people said on things like Final Fantasy 16, but either way, it is still definitely true. What is interesting is they took the reviews off of Metacritic, which shows why devs are so obsessed with the high score numbers. Those numbers are what shareholders look at to judge the game. I've always thought the scores were too good. Didn't fool them, though. Outside of fan expectations being turn-based and like all the other FFs before it, I don't understand the hate for 16. It built some epic moments with music, voice acting, and boss fights. Yeah, it just wasn't a good side game. but not a good mainline Final Fantasy title. The reunion says, I wonder if this was the catalyst for the massive layoffs in the Western branches. Probably. I think a big part of this is the fact that they don't seem to really listen to fans when it comes to content, especially console exclusivity is running them in the ground, and I can only hope that FF7R Part 3 will be out on all platforms from day one. A gamer can dream. Let them sell their shares, others will buy them. The real reason why they laid those people off while the narrative being pushed across social media was because of the woke Western culture. The problem is that the woke Westerners are the ones who are pushing them into making this type of content, convincing them that, oh, you need to modernize, you need to change your ideals, you need to change your company culture, you need to hire new voices into this space if you want to stay in the now and you actually want to gain this new audience. And it's the Westerners that are convincing these companies that there is this fictitious modern audience out there who's going to swipe their credit card on Slop, and that's not happening. Maybe they shouldn't have abandoned their real fan base in the first place, and they would have been making money all these years later. So yeah, I mean, this 100-page document is hilarious to see. Gamers are reacting in a very positive way, saying, well, they got what they deserve, and I will be following this really closely, but it looks like some pretty bad news for Square Enix, and maybe they will change in the future. Only time will tell, but let's not get too hopeful for a company that has made so many bad decisions over the past few years. But that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this important and informative, make sure to give it a like, share it, and subscribe to the channel. And if you didn't, give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I'll talk to you all again in the next video really soon.